The Cubs drop yet another game in which they go first to ninth inning looking pretty lifeless. That means we're closer to the trade deadline, which is a time when we might see some Cubs players finding some new homes. We're going to talk about that and where some of those new homes might be. That and more on this edition of the Cubs Baseball Channel. Make sure to like and subscribe. Get in the comment section. Follow us on Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter, and we will talk to you guys soon. What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Cubs Baseball Channel. My name is Anthony Pasquale with the great Mick Gillespie. He is on my right, and he's on Twitter at Broadcaster Mick. I'm at ant_Pasquale3. You guys can find us on there, and you can also find the Cubs Baseball Channel on there, on Twitter, on Instagram, on TikTok. So find us on there. We've got some clips, some questions, some polls, all those sorts of fun social media things on there. So follow us, engage with us on there, and we'll bring you some Cubs content. But unfortunately, not a great game to report from. The Cubs lose another game where they looked lifeless. They lost 6-0. Couldn't get anything going offensively. Defense was sloppy, even though it shows no errors in the column. It wasn't a well-played game defensively, but all the damage came in one inning. Bottom of the fifth inning, Cubs gave up 6 runs, and that was the game. It was 0-0 on the scoreboard the rest of the way.
Well, Kyle Hendricks pitches, and it's like he rolls along, and then he kind of has that one hiccup, and that's been the story, it feels like, for him the entire year. You know, he got through the first 4 innings, and I was like, hey, it's good to see him back, but the misses get hit so hard, and, you know, you're right. I mean, it felt like typical 2024 Cubs baseball in so many different ways, right? You know, the offense isn't doing anything, and then Kyle Hendricks kind of having a flash of where you're going, hey man, maybe, and then all of a sudden nothing.
Yeah, it always seems to happen his third time through the order. That seems to always be when that hiccup comes. But I will say that hiccup may not have had to happen, because if Seiya Suzuki doesn't misplay a fly ball in right field, which won't get charged as an error, which means all of the runs get charged as earned runs to Hendricks just because he didn't get to the ball in time, so he dropped it. But any average to above average outfielder gets to that ball. And if Seiya does, that fifth inning is over a lot sooner, and the Cubs don't give up 6 runs. Heck, they might still be playing a 0-0 ball game the way they were pitching. But Seiya Suzuki has displayed a ton of struggles out there in the outfield. He was the Cubs' only force offensively yesterday, had 2 hits and a walk. So he was on base 3 times. I think the rest of the team combined for 2. So he's getting it done offensively, but long term, this guy has to be a DH, right?
Yeah, he's not very good. Well, Owen Casey's going to take that job. I've said that for 2 years now. I'm going to stick to it, but he's just unreliable defensively. He can hit, but you're right. I mean, it is what it is. You heard that before, right?
Yeah.
And it's not like this team really has any other options right today, but defensively, I'd say he's below average. I mean, I think that's a fair statement.
Yeah, let me ask you this. If you had to pick one guy's in the lineup, one guy's sitting, or one guy's DHing, one guy's in the field, do you trust Morel more at third base or Seiya more in right field?
Seiya more in right field, just because the ball doesn't come to him as much. But
fair enough, yeah.
But Morel hasn't, he hasn't been much better either. Those are two. The defense this year hasn't been. We thought it was going to be a really good defensive team. They were last year. They just haven't been, and that's probably one of the reasons why we're in this spot right now.
Exactly. And as you look forward, you only have one DH, so one of those guys is going to have to be moved to a new position or moved to another team. And we've talked about some trades. John Morosi of MLB Network has recently connected the Cubs with the Yankees. and they could connect on a multitude of different players that the Yankees might be looking for. They're looking for potentially a first baseman, a second baseman, some starting pitching. So what are your thoughts on the Cubs and the Yankees connection, Mick?
Yeah, they've had a great relationship. Jim Hendry, the former GM of the Cubs, and a guy I like a lot, by the
Yeah.
way, too, is with the Yankees. The Cubs have made some deals with these guys over the years. Cubs don't win the World Series without that trade in 2016
Oh,
to get
absolutely.
Aroldis Chapman, right? But there's been a lot of other deals too. That they made the trade to get to send Anthony Rizzo there.
Right.
They made a trade, I think, for the sidearm pitcher that they had. I'm trying to think of the
Yeah,
guy's
we
name.
got Wisniewski for Efros.
Yeah, Efros, that's right. So I mean, and there's other deals too. Those
Mhm.
are just off the top of the head. And what surprised me about this was that I figured that Cody Bellinger, and I know that the opt out in his contract is
It's
causing
complicated.
right, it's causing teams to second guess maybe a deal with Bellinger. But Bellinger's a former MVP and comeback player of the year. Can you imagine the outfield with Bellinger and Judge and Soto? I mean, that
Yeah.
sounds so Yankee to me.
Mhm.
But what John Morosi's saying is that Nico Hoerner and Mike Tauchman are the guys that they're thinking about right now. The other one is that, Mike Tauchman played for the Yankees for 3 years, and then the other guy you're hearing is Jameson Taillon. Then he played for the Yankees too. It's like if
Yeah.
you like these guys, why wouldn't you keep them in the first place? Well, I'm sure Taillon's going to end up somewhere else. Mark Leiter Jr. is going to end up somewhere else. Teams need pitching. And then I'd be, Mike Tauchman, and Nico Hoerner, that's probably an easier contract to take. And then Tauchman's a player they know already. But if you're trying to win a World Series, I mean, I know Tauchman's a good player, but Cody Bellinger is potentially like a difference maker. If he got hot for a team like that, I mean, look out.
Yeah, and I know they have Verdugo in the outfield too, so they've been using Verdugo, Judge, and Soto, but you throw in Bellinger and he's instantly the best defensive outfielder of the bunch.
Yep.
But they've also had a little bit of a hole at first, especially with Anthony Rizzo hurt, and Bellinger can play first too. So Bellinger feels like a no-brainer for me if I'm the Yankees. And it's funny you mentioned Jim Hendry without giving away too much. He was a member at the country club that I work at, so
Oh, cool.
I've known him for a good amount of years too before I even got into baseball at all. Super nice guy, like you said. So yeah, the Cubs have had a lot of connections with the Yankees in the past. It's funny that the two names that keep popping up are former Yankees, like you said. Tauchman and Taillon are guys that they already have some familiarity with. But it makes you wonder why they get rid of them in the first place. But
Mhm.
the Yankees and the Cubs are connected on that. We heard yesterday or 2 days ago, I believe, that the Astros might be interested in
Yep.
Jameson Taillon. The Cubs could probably leverage the Yankees with the Orioles, who are also going to be looking for those same types of positions. So we've got about 4 days left until the trade deadline.
Mhm.
But
Well,
a lot,
Baltimore's made a bunch of deals too, so
yeah.
that's going to put pressure on the Yankees because the Orioles went out and got a starting pitcher from the Rays.
Mhm.
They made a trade for a bullpen guy from the Phillies.
Yep.
And they're making deals and they're trying to bolster this team up to make a real run at it. And the Yankees have been scuffling anyway. So if I'm them, I'm looking at this and I'm going, this Cubs are a good trade partner, but they might have to give up some pretty big pieces even to get Tauchman
Yeah.
and Nico. And if you throw Jameson Taillon in there, I say, give me all the Cubs, give me all the Yankees prospects, and you can
Why
have
not?
those guys and let's move forward.
Yeah, and then if the Cubs make a deal with the Yankees, and then the Orioles see that the Cubs made a deal with the Yankees, and they want to make sure the Yankees don't get too good, the Orioles have one of the best benches in baseball, plus one of the best farm systems. So they're dealing from a lot of major league ready or major league talent. So that'd be a good partner for some of these Cubs to look for as well. And I think we both agree, obviously, with 4 days to the deadline, you're not buying anything because you got a 3.8% chance to make the playoffs. We've been tracking that for about a month now. I think that's the lowest it's been, and 1.2% chance to win the division. The Cubs are now still in last place, 11 games back in the NL Central, but because the Mets and the Padres and all the other teams ahead of them in the wild card race keep winning, that once 3.5 game deficit that you saw earlier in the week, It's at 6.5 now, which is a lot harder to make up, especially because there's about half a dozen teams in between you and that third wild card spot. And the Padres and the Mets are both on fire. The Mets took over the Braves spot as the number 1 wild card. So
How about that?
it's looking rough for the Cubs. But like we always talk about, there's still a baseball game today, and we get to see our guy Shota Imanaga pitch. He's 8-2 on the season with a 2.86 ERA against Seth Lugo. Look at those numbers for Lugo. He's having a great season for the Royals. I'm sure a lot of people are thinking that the Cy Young is going to be Tariq Skubal or Corbin Burns, but Seth Lugo has to be right in the mix with numbers like that. 12-4 with a 2.38 ERA. He goes against a Cubs team that just got shut out yesterday. I wouldn't be shocked if he did it again. This offense has looked rough the last few nights.
Well, they haven't hit the good pitching all year, and the great pitching has dominated them. That's been one of their issues from the jump, really. What you got to remember though is that the way that things are set up right now with the extra wild card makes it to where there's not a lot of sellers and there's a ton of buyers, right?
Right.
And Kansas City's taken advantage of that. They've made some really good trades, and now all of a sudden, look at them. I mean, they're one of the surprising teams in baseball, and I feel like for the Cubs, like, you know, they're a couple of young moves away from being in the same exact thing. I mean, they've got some good players that are trying to make the transition. Some of those guys are still in double and triple A, but go out and take advantage of this market. I honestly, you know, kind of going back to the chances of making the playoffs, I felt like that this would have happened last year. Yeah. And, you know, maybe as hard as we were on David Ross for, you know, maybe not being as doing a good enough job of transitioning the young players to the team. The team to me is about the same as it was last year, but the results aren't the same. So, you know, I mean, that says something, you know, and I know luck's part of it, and I know injuries have been a big part of it as well, too. But what a disappointing season.
Yeah,
just disappointing.
Without a doubt. And you look at the Royals and you think, oh, what's the big difference between them and the Cubs? You look at their starting pitching. The Cubs line up like they've had about the same starting pitching. They've been really good, both teams starting the games. But the big difference is their all-star shortstop is playing like an all-star and their catcher is above average. Like the Cubs just don't have that. Their all-star shortstop is playing like a replacement level player, and they haven't had a quality catcher all season long. Mix that in with 18, 19 blown games, and here you are in last place thinking about selling at the trade deadline. But guys, thank you so much for joining us here on the Cubs Baseball Channel. We'll be back with you all weekend talking about Cubs and Royals, but also talking about some of these trades that may go down. I'm sure the Cubs might have even a small move within the next couple of days, and you can count on us to jump on it as soon as we can. But for now, like, subscribe, get in that comment section, follow us on TikTok, Twitter, and Instagram, and we'll talk to you guys tomorrow, hopefully after a Cubs W. Go Cubs.